welcome to another great session that is the World Gaming Trade Show. The first video and the first episodes for 2023. I am your host, Jeremy, aka your retro activist, aka your in-game boss. But I'm not alone. Of course, joining me in 2023. Thank goodness he's one of the survivors of 2022. And now he's here for another year to join us. Mr. Brando from the Game Addict podcast. How are you, sir?
Doing really good. You know, it's been a little while since I podcast, and I might be a little bit out of practice here, but I'm really good to be back here on the show and with you, and to be, diving into some of these awesome games that time has forgot. And that's kind of what we do here on the show. What we do is we take a look at maybe some games or some franchises that been sitting there collecting dust, just like all these old games I got sitting over here. And sometimes they just kind of just don't get revisited. There's not much desire. Maybe they feel like this is just a dead franchise. Well, that's what we do. We try to kind of, thumb through the weeds a little bit and try to find the little nuggets of awesomeness to try and figure out what we can do to revitalize these and bring them into the modern age with some newer developers and some newer ideas. And that's what we're going to do here again today with two games. And we're each going to take a pick. We don't know each other's developers that we picked or anything like that.
Surprise.
So that's going to be really cool. Sometimes we land on the same one, and that's even funnier.
Yes. Thinking about it now, it's 2023. We've been doing this show monthly. Sometimes due to life, we take a little break in between a couple of months, but we still keep it going. I think we've been on this for it's actually been 2-3 years now. And we have And we have done everything from doing a Star Wars theme to sports to racing games. Like, we have dove so much into these old library of characters and games that we only still scratch the surface. There's still a lot of games out there. Even games that we speak now that are not that old are becoming series that are not talking about anymore. And so we'll probably come back to those soon. So it's almost like just a infinite fountain of just games to always talk about, and who do we think can still do it. The sad part about this through these generations of gaming is these studios that we decide to pick at the time that we talk about a game, some of them don't exist anymore. Like, what happened to you? You were doing so well, and it's like, oh, that's the game that hurt you? I am so sorry. I'm sorry we're taking a game, for example, like Dead Space, that's coming out this month, Visceral got shut down, and now another studio's taking their game that they made and remaking it. So, you just never know what's going on with this. But like you said, we dove deep into the games that we decided to pick, that we picked on our own. We kind of just pick the choice that we have, and then we just keep everything else a surprise in the vision that we want to see from this game. Some of it is fantasy. Some of it could be logical. It just depends what we're feeling for this. But the first game we're going to talk about, Brando, it is your pick for part one of this. So why don't you present your pick to our listeners and viewers?
So my pick for part one of this episode is Road Rash. Did you ever play Road Rash back in the day?
I did for a little bit, but I didn't go too deep. I didn't know there was that many when I did my research. I didn't know there were that many. I always thought it was always ported.
It's been ported quite a bit. But the first one I actually played was Road Rash 3D.
Okay.
I think I played on the PlayStation, and I just remember thinking, this game is wild, man. You're racing along, and you get weapons. It's almost kind of like it's not quite as like a battle game, like a racer, like a kart racer. Or
not like a Twisted Metal, right? Not like that.
Yeah, not quite, but it's like inch it, like you get like you blunt and you hit people, knock them off the track and stuff like that. And I just remember the soundtrack being like really high and energetic.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, we're gonna get a killer soundtrack for this. That's gonna be it's gonna be a budget. We're gonna get some awesome rock tunes that are gonna be playing, and bikes are going to be central. We're going to get some awesome bikes. Going to try and get some licenses for some cool bikes. The idea that I had for this is a kind of like an online type open world where you race and you form motorcycle gangs with some of your friends, and you race for basically territories. So it's going to be open world. And use that kind of deal, and so like other people can kind of like invade and take your territory by doing these races, and it almost kind of combines where have you ever played like Forza, and
Yes.
all of a sudden your buddy who's played Forza, the AI is like, hey, wait, no, well, man, I see you playing all the time. Like, I haven't played that game in 2 months, but you're always seeing like the people who have been like, I always see my buddy Rob playing that game, and it's like he's like, yeah, I haven't played that game for a while. I've been playing this game, and like, well, I want that kind of deal where it's like you come in, it's like, boom, your territory's been taken. I kind of want it to be. That's the kind of thing that keeps bringing people back, is to divide for more territory, to keep their territory.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of use some of the things and other online games, kind of like what they do in like Red Dead, where you form a posse, or GTA,
I like that.
where you form.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like where you form a gang or something like that. But like, I want that kind of aspect to it, where you guys are together as a group, as an MC. And I guess I'll go first. One of the companies or developers that I want to see take this on.
Hang on. I got to ask before you drop the bomb of who your developers. You mentioned the banging soundtrack, right? And my mindset is like, I'm getting a Tony Hawk feel with this soundtrack in my head, but I need to know from the guy that knows how to rock, what bands do you think, and you just throw up some bands that you think would just rock this album for you. You've
got to get Painkiller from Judas Priest.
Okay.
That's got to be standard. That boom. As soon as you hit start, you're going to get hit with killer drums going into a riff with vocals that will screech and tear your eardrums out. That Judas Priest, when they first came out, didn't kind of have that sound. They got heavier as they went along. And then they kind of went into their Turbo Lover phase, where the people are like, what is this, man? This isn't like breaking the law. But then they hit Painkiller, and they're like, what is this? that is one of the heaviest songs of all time. So you start with Painkiller. Then you try to throw in some Iron Maiden. You know, okay. We're going a lot of 80s metal here.
That's what's up.
Maybe you throw in some newer stuff. I'm not saying that you're going to sit there and try to copy paste Brutal Legend, because is that a game we talked about here? We talked about Brutal Legend at one point.
Oh, we don't talk about Brutal Legend on the show because it's lost into the award mist.
Oh, that's one of the ones we lost.
It was the one we lost, along with Rockin' Cat. Maybe we'll do a redemption episode, but it is gone now. It is gone now. Yes.
Brutal Legend had one of the best like metal soundtracks that I'd ever had seen in the game. Like smaller deep cut bands, as well as bigger ones, but definitely start with some Priest and Maiden, and then go from there.
That's what's up.
No, I'm gonna go with Ivory Tower. They're a Ubisoft, and they're the ones behind The Crew.
You know, it's so funny. I thought of them. I really did. That's not my pick. But you know, when it comes to developer racing, there's some slim pickings. But I'm curious why you picked this group, The Crew from the Ubisoft.
I mean, I was really impressed by the scope,
okay,
of how big the world was for this, and maybe a little bit more of the arcadey feel. I kind of want that here, and so that's where we're going to start with. I don't think it should be countrywide, like they do in The Crew.
Yeah, that's a little bit. That's a little bit too much.
I think it's a bit big. I think you can have as much a bigger. I think you can have an equally sized big world if you have like. Even if you just have like a city or a region, okay, like
kind of like for example, like a Need for Speed, you know, kind of that size. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay,
yeah. But I really liked their mechanics, and when I was thinking of something for Road Rash, it's like, as you said, it's slim pickings. We've already talked about some racing here before in the past, and we've utilized some of these awesome developers for some other stuff, and they could equally do, you know, something like this as well. But I feel like we just hadn't really mentioned them very much here.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I'd like, the more I thought about it, the more that you have a continual evolving online experience based off of group gameplay, based off of your posse or your gang or MC, and just give the ability to make that appointment gaming every night, for you to go on, log on. Oh, hey, we got to go race here, do this. I think it'd be really cool. Definitely bring back the weapons. We're not going Twisted Metal. We're not going guns. Okay, we're not going. We're not doing no street sweeping here. But I would definitely think it'd be cool to get inventive with some of the kinds of, like, I mean, yeah, you got your chains, you got your blunt instruments, but I think it'd be really cool to like maybe set some traps.
Okay.
And do stuff like that along the way. So like, but also like the gameplay, the racing gameplay, it'd be team oriented. So like you could have multiple teams in on a race. So like say you're in there and only 2 buddies can get on. So you got like 3 people. Well, all 3 of you are racing. So as long as one of you wins, then the placement of points, however that is, it determines how much territory gets taken over in this spot here. So then it's not always about you coming in first. It's about maybe like you guys working together in tandem.
So kind of like a point system, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Kind of like what they do in NASCAR and in that kind of deal, where say you're way out in front and I'm kind of way back and I'm catching up, but now my goal is to try and disrupt the other racers behind you.
Yeah, kind of like roller derby, kind of in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I thought of for the for Road Rash, because I think the last attempt at Road Rash was like over 10 years ago or something like that. I think there was one on the PS3, maybe. I don't know. It's been a long time.
I got you back on this one. The game you're probably thinking about is the spiritual successor to that, called Road Redemption. And this is a game that kind of followed the Road Rash spiritual style of doing that, but amped it up. You were talking about no guns. That game did guns. You said traps. They did bombs on cars, or cops that did that. And the piggyback on that, I agree with the multiplayer. I agree with the team base of the roller derby thing. I wrote that in my notes, that would be great as you're making your gang to go back and forth. I agree with the open world that I wrote. You can just drive to the location you have and maybe try to take over that territory for what's like. Make it a more open world instead of like just race after race after race. And if you do races and stuff, the courses have to be pretty unique in their own way. So much, I think, like in the old Road Rash, cops were involved, but they weren't involved enough, and I think they need to amp it up a little bit more. Yeah, sure, like I think based on, I saw a video for Road Rash 3, helicopters were involved, but they didn't do anything, Here, I think cops should be more involved of like, setting up roadblocks, doing stuff. I'm not talking about like they're going out of the way to like over the top to arrest you, but let's get a little bit more immersed in this world and have these cops kind of do more stuff in here to feel like, hey, you are a bad guy at the end of the day, so let's do that. And another thing that I also put was, you were talking about, you mentioned custom biking, and I was like, yeah, that would work with the whole upgrading your biking of the money that you make in the game, because I think in Road Rash 2, like if you get caught by a cop or something happens to your vehicle, that takes money out of your payment that you win for every race. So like the money you can make on that race, or with your team, could be there to help upgrade your bikes, all that kind of stuff. Or like, hey, maybe you could pay off the cops if you get too many tickets or too many issues and you go to jail or something. You guys have to like, get you out and whatnot. A day and night event. I was looking at Need for Speed, and I was looking at like, oh, they have different missions depending on day and night. So I thought that would be kind of cool. So you get to see different ways of doing that. My question for you is, later in the Road Rash, they actually started traveling to different locations in different regions of the world. Is that something, would that be cool, like as a DLC to you for this game, if that happened? Like, hey, now that you have this city, your next DLC story will be like, maybe Brazil or Europe or whatever place they want to do, or a different part of the city, like a New York or LA or whatever.
Well, to me, that sounds honestly like a no-brainer. It sounds like season type stuff to sell, to keep the game active, to keep people involved. You mentioned events. You could have events where it's like crackdown events where it's like, hey, cops are way more active right now and they're taking everybody down, trying to take down these motorcycle clubs and all this street racing in Rash City or wherever we're going to be at. But like, you could have like just like they do with Fortnite or with even with, like we already mentioned, GTA Online, where they have like, continual evolving events throughout the online community to help keep people interested. New locations, new upgrades, new bikes, new weapons, new creative type events that you can do that go over the top and be silly. All that.
And I was also thinking, like, other than just team racing, there could be some cool modes, like, like maybe your team and another team race to go after like a person. It's a race. Whoever can get to that person wins, or something like it. Or maybe you pull a bank job. It could be a good one. You're trying to outrun the cops, and you already mapped out the course. You just have to make it to the end, and these cops can have these roadblocks, or they could have these traps, and maybe there's ramps and stuff you can go over, as a team, or even solo. I don't care. I think there is opportunity to do different modes if you really put into it. Especially like I think we mentioned a long time ago when we did our N64 sports thing about Excite Bike, and I mentioned that maybe there could be different course that you can take to get to the conclusion that you're at. Because I think in Road Rash, it wasn't necessarily like laps. It was more of like just one place to another place, kind of like an Outrun or a Cruising USA for that example. And so the company I picked, or studio I picked, actually it was going to be Codemaster, but Codemaster got merged to Criterion. So I picked Criterion. And they're under EA because Road Rash is under EA. And so I think it works both ways, because EA recently has been doing collaborations with certain studios. One of them is being Omega something, I forgot, but basically the studio Tecmo for Wild Hearts that's coming out. So why not EA do a teamwork with Ubisoft, even though they're like, it's funny because Ubisoft and EA are the notorious third-party rivals of the generation of gaming, even from the beginning. They were always been this rival of everything, but I don't see why they can't work together now. But being Road Rash, if I had to pick somebody internal, which I went with, Criterion seems like the person to do it, because every other studio that tried to do a race game don't exist anymore. It feels like they all merged to Criterion, or they got shut down. So Criterion, knowing for the Burnout series, and now the head of the new Need for Speed that came out, Unbound, I think, it came out this year. It seems like they're the ones that could probably do it, because I think one of the things they're really good at is the destruction. And, with Road Rash, these races are not on an empty road. There are traffic that you have to go through. So seeing these cool wrecks and what you can do would be pretty badass, in my opinion. And so,
absolutely, man. I think it's a great pick. I thought about them as well, especially after looking at I haven't played the new Need for Speed, but I have been seeing gameplay of it. It looks really interesting and stylistically different than anything that I've ever kind of seen before in the genre. And it's a real shame it didn't really seem like a whole lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Need for Speed. It is what it is for Need for Speed, or I don't know. I think Criterion's always it's funny, because I think ever since Burnout has not been the big highlight, where Criterion is just there. Because I always like Burnout more than I like Need for Speed anyways. But since Burnout's not really exists anymore, and then there's other games that are competing against Need for Speed, hence Forza, they're not really in the talk anymore. It's just more of like, well, we got quite a fan base for Need for Speed for this, and that's it. So
it almost kind of seems like that EA didn't really put a whole lot of I don't know, like advertising or attention on it.
I agree.
To make it seem like even a bigger deal than maybe it could be, like overhype it. It just didn't seem like they hyped it that much. I
100% agree with that, because it did come out like in the fall, and it's hard, and they didn't pick a good month to do that. Like, I think it came out in November, I want to say. Someone can let me know. But if it came out in November, as I assume, November is a tough month to come out as a racing game, because you're dealing with all the bangers that are coming out, especially that year in 22. That is the Pokemon series, the Sonic Frontiers, and, of course, God of War Ragnarok. And Black Friday didn't seem to spark anything out of that. So, I don't know.
I saw it discounted in early December, and it had only been out for a couple of weeks.
So there you go.
And that was sad, because like I've never been a Need for Speed hater, but I definitely have not really played them. But I've always enjoyed them, and like anytime I do pick one up and get a chance to play, it's always just pretty fun to play. Need for Speed was one of the earliest games on the PlayStation I played, along with Road Rash. You know, I kind of hold those two kind of like in my memories of early days of racing games on the PlayStation as being kind of like arcade fun style games. And that's one of the reasons why I chose Road Rash, because Need for Speed is still, even though there's not a lot of attention on it here lately or hype, it's still going, and I'm happy for that. But I just wish someone would like, hey man, let's try to do something different and neat. Because I kind of feel like the racing genre has been kind of monopolized into just a couple of big franchises that are just, whether like you mentioned Forza, and then their big rival Gran Turismo, and then the more of the arcade style just isn't as talked about unless it's like a kart racer, Mario Kart, which Mario Kart's fun and awesome. Yeah, I mean, come on, but it's not like. I wish there was room for more, and it just with how big game developers are now today, with budgets and length of development, a lot of big studios or big publishers are looking at return of investment. Us putting money into this project, where's our return of investment? When are we going to get it? And how can we do this? It's one reason why you see. Big online titles, and I'm sorry I don't have one right off the top of my head. Anthem, if you want to stick with EA, how quickly that was shut down.
Even after they said, "You don't need a big budget for that for Road Rash." In my opinion, you don't need a big budget for it.
I don't think so either. But like, even if they're going to put money into it, and if it's something that they feel like is not caught on, and it's an online centric game, it's gone. It's completely dead. And that's just the world that we live in now. They're going to cut and run and go put money into something that they feel like that they're going to get their money back on, and then make a profit.